It's the 11th of April, 1855, and the first pillar boxes are put up in London. We have at least one of each kind here in my new hometown, and today we're going to find them. This is a pillar box, and to those of us from North America, it looks a little bit like a fire hydrant on steroids. That's because our fire hydrants look like this, but they're a little more like this in height. The perfect height for a kid to leapfrog over and catch their trousers on that top bit and send them arse over kettles, face first into the ground. I've been visiting this country pretty much every year since 2004, but it wasn't until we moved here about 5 years ago that I noticed you don't have fire hydrants. Well, at least the type I'm used to anyway. This is a British fire hydrant. The H stands for hydrant, and it's down there under the pavement somewhere. So what's a pillar box? Remember, this is a video about pillar boxes. And why should I care? Well, you wouldn't unless you were trying to post a letter. It's a mailbox, or as they call it here, a post box or a pillar box, because it's shaped like a pillar, I guess. Canada Post has mailmen deliver the mail, and here in the UK, Royal Mail has postmen deliver the post. There's such a ubiquitous thing here in the UK, nobody even notices them. Royal Mail estimates there are over 115,000 post boxes in the United Kingdom. No matter where you go, you're usually never more than half a mile from a post box. These pillar boxes are such a part of the urban landscape that you probably haven't even noticed that they're not all the same. They all have a royal cipher, and that cipher is different depending on who was on the throne when it was installed. They first came into use during Queen Victoria's reign, and I really had to search my mind to find a Victorian one, but here's one on Marsland Road, just outside Walkden Gardens. Queen Victoria, the grandmother of Europe. Her reign lasted an impressive 63 years, from 1837 to 1901. During that time, Britain saw the rise of the Industrial Revolution and the construction of the transatlantic cable, another invention that was going to see the end of snail mail. The cable stretched all the way from Ireland to Heart's Content, Newfoundland, not far from my old stomping grounds. The cable was laid by Brunel's ship, the Great Eastern. It had a length of over 2,600 miles, but it was a short-lived venture, and it soon would be replaced when Marconi received his first transatlantic radio message at Cabot Tower in St. John's, Newfoundland. During Victoria's reign, over 30,000 pillar boxes were installed across the UK, and the penny black stamp was invented. The penny black stamp was the first adhesive postage stamp in the world, and it revolutionized the way people sent mail. And thus the riddle, "I travel the world, but stay in my corner," was born. It was also during Victoria's reign that the first pillar boxes were painted red, a color that would later become synonymous with Royal Mail. Early ones were octagonally shaped and painted green. It was thought that the green color would be unobtrusive. A little too unobtrusive, it turned out. People kept walking into them. There have been a lot of strange things sent through the Royal Mail over the years. People still like to send food through the post, but how about wild game? You could do that, and you didn't even have to box it up. As long as it wouldn't leak and it had a label around its neck, it was fair game. The rules were a little more lax back in the day. You could even send live animals, as long as it was bigger than a bee and smaller than an elephant. Yep, those were the actual rules. But they weren't too happy about a jar full of live scorpions. Still, there was no rule saying you couldn't send live humans through the post. In 1909, 2 suffragettes, Miss Solomon and Miss McClellan posted themselves to 10 Downing Street using the Royal Mail's same-day courier service. They wanted to deliver their message to the Prime Minister in person. Unfortunately, they were returned to the sender by a Downing Street official who refused to sign for them. The postman had to fill out a few forms that day, explaining why he couldn't fulfill his duty. Next, we have King Edward VII here on Harborough Road. He ruled from 1901 to 1910. His reign saw the introduction of the first stamp with the portrait of a monarch on it, and of course his very own pillar box. During his reign, the number of pillar boxes in the UK continued to increase, with over 35,000 in operation by the time he passed away. Edward VII was also known for his love of travel. He was the first British monarch to visit Russia. King George V, he reigned from 1910 to 1936. The number of post boxes for each monarch is unknown, but George V pillar boxes are very common, like this one on the corner of Framingham and Woodbourne Road. During his reign, there may have been as many as 60,000 installed, due to the growth of the postal service and the expansion of the railway network. Another factor that contributed to the increase in post boxes during King George V's reign was the First World War. Many temporary post boxes were installed across the country to cope with the increased demand for postal services for soldiers. Just imagine how many letters have gone through a slot like this to a son at the front. George V oversaw the introduction of the first airmail service. There are many different designs of pillar boxes, including the blue airmail box, gold ones for gold medal Olympians from the 2012 Olympics, and black ones to celebrate Black history. The design was standardized under George V and became the iconic red pillar box we know today. George VI's reign from 1936 to 1952 saw the UK's involvement in the Second World War, which had a significant impact on the postal service. Many post boxes were removed or sealed during the war, and temporary post boxes were installed to cope with the demand. Many were lost in air raids. During his time as king, pillar boxes were painted green as part of the war effort, but after the war they were repainted in their signature red color. Wonder if there's some green paint under here. Queen Elizabeth II is up next. She reigned from 1952 to 2022. Elizabeth II saw many changes in the postal system, including the introduction of first-class and second-class mail services. The changes under her reign we're all well aware of. Until recently, she was the only monarch most of us knew. Elizabeth II had numerous stamps issued in her honor. The first stamp she ever appeared on was a Newfoundland stamp. This was before Canada joined Newfoundland, and before she was queen, of course. So here's another little curious thing that people do with these pillar boxes. Now, you may think I've missed one, but I saved the best for last. The rarest of them all, King Edward VIII, who had one of the shortest reigns of any British monarch. He only ruled for 326 days in 1936. He famously abdicated the throne in order to marry the American socialite Wallis Simpson, and as a result, very few pillar boxes bearing his insignia were ever produced. In fact, there are only a handful still in existence today, and we have one here on the corner of Framingham Road and Wood Road. So this leaves the question of, will King Charles III get a pillar box? And if so, where will the first one go? I hereby nominate Sale. There can't be many places in the country that have one of each monarch, and we can't have that standing ruined. Now, before we go, I have to give honorable mention to another famous postbox. Well, a pair, actually. It's not in sale, It's on the other side of the brook, the famous left-handed and right-handed post boxes of Timperley. One for left-handed people and one for right-handed people.